everyone, and welcome to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy at TV. In case you're not a subscriber yet, please do subscribe. Just press the subscribe button as well as turn on the notification bell so that you can get notifications when we upload our videos. Don't also forget to subscribe and join, follow, like our other social media platforms. Of course, you're seeing it right about now. Don't also forget to share this video across your platforms. Enjoy the video. All right, welcome back to the program. Just like I mentioned earlier on, we will start our first interview, and we're looking at GDP as well as Nigeria's budget. Joining me right now is Dotun Seyingbo, a development economist. Dotun, hello, and welcome to the program. Can you hear me?
Oh, Nancy, yes, I can hear you.
Can you see me?
Thank you so much. Not really. The video is not.
Okay, so you can't see me on Zoom. Okay, director, please fix that. All right, let's get started, but you can hear me.
Sure.
Yes, let's get started with the GDP numbers. I don't need to rehash it. Apparently, you would have seen it. GDP
Yeah.
up, but inequality is widening. How can we ensure that growth benefits all Nigerians?
Well, thank you so much, Nancy, for having this conversation. So, of course, as we've seen that our growth has steadied and, of course, marginally increased. And to your question as to how we can make sure that more people, get out of this pie, more people get out of this growth. I think first to understand that GDP, as we understand as economists, only measures growth, but in having development, then it has to be growth plus, a number of things. And what are these number of things? And I think that's where your question is getting at. Because if you only focus on the numbers, it may not, like we experience in Nigeria, it may not, directly translate to improved, living standards as we see. So what are these plus that should accompany these growth numbers that we're seeing? First, we want to see better institutions, and better institutions in the sense of, in a way that it helps us, it helps the government to better and efficiently allocate resources to productive sectors. If you have growth and you still have tendencies for misallocating resources, then you will hardly realize like reduce inequality as a result of this growth. So you want to see better institutions. And like I said, better institutions can also be explained in terms of better allocation of resources to more productive sectors. You also want to understand that this growth also needs to be accompanied by by the government trying to address, these binding constraints, some of these structural deficiencies that makes it difficult for most of our sectors, to be able for us to get the best out of our sectors, like our agricultural sectors, like, our solid mineral sector. So you need strong sectoral policies, industrial policies, that helps the government to better, support industries and firms in these sectors, to do better. So those two things are very important. And in addition to that, I'd also like to say that you also want to um, be careful, because when you look at the growth numbers, for example, you see that there are certain sectors that did well, there are certain sectors that are not doing well. What are the job elasticity of these sectors that are doing well? What's the employment, intensity of these sectors that are doing well? If you have sectors that are doing well that are not, high labor intensive sectors, then you have an issue in an economy where you have, of course, high unemployment and underemployment rate. You also want to be mindful that what's the marginal productivity of labor in these sectors that are doing well? Are laborers able to get, better returns for their job, for their activities in these sectors? Because these are things that will help to translate these macro numbers, these GDP numbers, to the daily lives of an average Nigerian. An average Nigerian wants to experience this growth in their pocket, right? They want to go home, with better wages, with decent wages. But what we need to do is ensure that these growth numbers are not just, in the aggregate, they're not just at that high level. We're able to ensure that they translate into jobs, jobs for our youth. They translate not just jobs, decent jobs, and then we're carefully ensuring that the sectors that are growing, or the sectors that are growing, are sectors that are hitting these very critical points, like employment, like I mentioned, which I think is very important. So those are, and then also, like I said earlier, then you also want to ensure that amidst this growth that is happening, you are also dealing with the structural deficiencies. What do we mean by some of these structural? We're talking about infrastructure decay. We're
Yeah.
talking about, road infrastructure that is, we're talking about the business environment that is not so conducive for the private sector to create jobs. So these are things that we need to do, in addition to the growth that we're seeing, so that we can move from growth to development. We can move from growth, and then we can ensure that, the average Nigerian feels these growth numbers on their table, like every morning when
Yeah.
they wake up, they feel it. So I believe those. And then you also want to, and we know that, some of these issues, we also need to start addressing inflation. The inflation, we know that inflation has been a major problem across the country. So this, and if these growth numbers, if an average Nigerian still goes to work, hence money, but the money is not able to take them home, then there's a big problem. So, and
Okay.
we know that, some of the structural issues are contributing to these inflationary tendencies.
Okay, that brings me now to our next segment, which is let's take a look at budgeting for citizens. And the organization, which is ADSR, Analyst Data Services, if I'm not mistaken, you guys did a
Yeah.
fantastic piece on that. And I'm asking my director to put that on the screen so that we can take a look at what you guys did. Very interesting piece in terms of budgeting for citizens. And that leads me to the next question around, we have high population growth in the country, but yet a low GDP per capita. How do we now, how do we drive shared prosperity? If the federal government, of course, the federal government's budget is still at the National Assembly, and we're going to March. Anyway, it's just, anyway, they said there are errors in the 54 trillion or so. Whatever it is, only God knows when our budget for 2025 will be out. But what I'm trying to say in essence is if the federal government is budgeting over 50 trillion for the country, the state governments too, I think both FG and states, the budget for this year is in excess of 81 trillion naira. So,
Correct.
but we have low GDP per capita in the country. So please, can you explain that, and how can we have shared prosperity? Very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, like the report says, we have the National Assembly recently approved the 54 plus trillion, just like you said, and total
But they are
federal
still
plus
working
state.
on it.
Yeah, working on it, 81 trillion. So connecting budget to prosperity, of course, that's what every government needs to pay attention to, so that our budget is not just numbers. And I think one point that we first need to make is Nigerian policymakers need to start understanding budget not just as a financial document, prepared for accounting purposes, but also a document that can be used for macroeconomic management. Because, for example, one of the things that you would notice is because the budget, of course, is a fiscal document.
Document, yeah.
And we know that one of the channels of the inflationary pressures that we've seen over time is the lack of coordination between monetary and fiscal policy. And the budget fits into that equation through the fiscal side. So if you have a budget that you're not coordinating properly, then you're not coordinating properly and it's not properly implemented, then you can have, it feed into, adding to your inflationary pressure as a country. And we've seen that at least in last year, right? So one thing we want to, and the point I'm getting at here is we need to start seeing budget as an instrument for macroeconomic management. One of the things we've seen from the way budget is used, when you look at some of the numbers, growth rates in the assumptions are treated as inputs, right? And most of these things, like if you check the inflation also, they're treated as input for calculation, for computing those numbers in the budget. We need to start getting to a point where we're using the budget to address these issues. For example, you're asking yourself, how can our budget help bring down inflation? Those are questions that our budget currently are not used to answer. How can we use our budget to target X growth, right? For example, if you check the growth numbers assumption in the budget, they're just assumptions just for input purposes. So I think that would be one quick point that I have to make. And the second point also about budget is also to understand what are we spending on. If we want to ensure that Nigerians benefit maximally from these numbers, from this spending, then what exactly are we spending on?
Okay.
If you have this,
Sorry, Doctor, I just have to come in here quickly because I'm also looking at our time. I would like you to
okay.
speak to our viewers as to how much per head is this budget that we're looking at, because the federal budget per capita amounts to what yearly for each citizen, and I would like you to also translate it to what it means daily, because Nigerians should be interested in conversations that we're having, especially on this show when it comes to economy. How much has the government earmarked for you this year, as well as the states? Very quickly, a minute.
So in the report, we assume that if the national budget were shared amongst Nigerians, equally,
Equally.
and what our report comes to is that each Nigeria will get 348,000 naira per year from the budget, from the 2025 budget. That's adding the federal and state. And on a daily basis, it means that Nancy, you are getting just about 1,000 naira
It's
per
not
day.
even. It's not even up to 1,000. Let me
It's
help you.
955. 955.
648 naira,
Yeah, yeah.
645
So
naira. So it's not up to 1,000, and
yeah,
it's
yeah. So
235,706 naira a year. So I'm not getting
yeah,
up
so
to. I'm not getting up to 1,000. So whether I'm not
y-
what, my life is not up to 1,000 in front of
well,
the government of
yeah,
Nigeria.
but I think Nancy, this
Yeah,
also throws up a very important issue.
yeah.
What it means for Nigerians is to say that, hey, what our government is currently spending is not enough,
It's not
right?
enough.
We need to spend more, right? And particularly for the state of development that our country is at, we need government to spend more on infrastructure. You need more. There are arguments that, oh, you need to the development, as you advance in development, private sector should start, taking over. But at the state that we're in, we need government to spend on critical infrastructure. And the point we're making with this report is that we need more, we need to get create more access to development financing for
Okay.
the government. We need to do more alternative financing mechanisms like PPPs, and then we need to improve our tax efficiency, increase tax efficiency as a country, because the expenditure comes back to how much you can raise. And
Exactly.
citizens also
Yeah.
must be interested. They must be interested in governance. They
Yeah.
must be willing to put their money where their mouth is. And this is the argument we're making. The numbers that you see there is not only an indictment on the government, but also as a citizen
As a
as well, to
citizen.
say, oh, we need to
Exactly.
do more, put more, and then we can demand for more accountability. And
Okay.
that's the essence of that report.
All right. Thank you, Dotun. We'll do this again. I promise you,
Thank you
because
so
this
much.
is just skeletal.
All right.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much
so much. Thanks
for
so much for having me.
for
And
joining here.
yeah,
All right.
bye.
All right,
Bye.
that's it for Dotun, who is a development economist. Thank you for making it up to this minute watching the video. Thank you all. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy TV. Like, follow all our other social media platforms where we keep you up to speed with fantastic interviews, as well as markets, personal finance, business, and economy information, this is the best place to be. I'll see you all again in the next video.